Madam Chair. It is short notice. There is a fiscal note on this, and there's also a summary, which I'm waiting on getting. Just provided you a copy of the bill. Let me just say that when we did our housing tour a couple of years ago, one of the things that became so clear to all of us is that while housing in the state of Vermont is mostly about money, and it still is mostly about money, and you've been very generous in giving money to VHCB and other places for housing, it's not only about money. And this bill is less about money than it is about policies we can do to make housing less costly to build, more timely to build, and promote denser housing in our state in smart growth areas. There's a whole bunch of sections in here on permit reform and wastewater reform. Some of them were in S101, which came back from the House in a far different shape than we passed in the Senate. And in here are provisions dealing with permitting and wastewater that passed the Senate on, I think, unanimous or strong votes. Do you want me to go through the entire bill or focus on
more probably the funding?
Okay.
My question, the missing middle, is the missing middle in here now?
Yes, it is.
That's the 5 million that we deferred until you got more information and got it fleshed out.
Right.
And then the governor had proposed 5 million in the BAA and then
10 million in 23.
10 million in 23. So you're putting in a bit more money than the governor.
No.
The 15 and 23 is the missing middle. The 5 and 22 is different.
Yeah,
Program.
Under the ARPA appropriation.
Yep.
So we went with the governor's numbers on both, not the timing. I can figure out it's here. But we stayed with the numbers. We did do something on the VHIP program, which still doesn't have any statutory basis in law until S210 passes, but it's, now it's 32, it's going to be potentially a $32 million program. And as you probably know, it gives money to landlords to rehab dilapidated housing or housing that's not under code. But in the VHIP program, the other section that is allowed for VHIP funds is to build accessory dwelling units, ADUs. And we spent a lot of time with that committee and heard a presentation from the White House on it. It was really good, and it's a way to build units of housing very inexpensively, small units of housing, and that's sort of what we had. So we said in the VHIP program in here that of the $20 million that's coming, 25% should go to build ADUs, which are already authorized once that bill passes. We also said that 20% of that 25%, 25% is about 5 million, so 20% of that is 1 million. We put into what we call sort of navigation or administration, because one of the big problems we heard about ADUs is people might be great candidates for them. They may be overhoused, their kids may have left, they may have a basement or an attic, but they don't know how to do it. They're not developers like the landlords or other developers. They have to go through a permit in town, they have to know about financing and all this stuff. So we want to have enough money in there to hold people's hands, almost to the point where saying, it would probably be somebody in a town government, or someone maybe in the regional planning. It hasn't been decided, but I would like to see it almost like I'm interested in this. Help me do it, and they take them all the way through the process.
The regional planning would work good in our rural areas, I think, or something.
For assisting individual homeowners.
Yes. Well, rather than every town having somebody.
Yes. No, I don't think towns would. And not only that, there's a certain expertise you need to provide that kind of financial I was just wondering.
And, over time, I can see a cottage industry developing where people, it's big enough that somebody will start a business and I can help you build an ADU, just like they help you do your taxes or something like that. So, the second thing on missing middle, we did the same. We put the amount of money the governor wanted. The big controversy we had there was on perpetual affordability, or I like to see when we give money out that we get something back for it. And in terms of the DHIP program, the requirement is you rent to either a homeless person for 5 years or you rent to a low income person for 10 years. And you get your money to help renovate your apartment. On the missing middle, which is for higher income people and for new construction, the developer gets money to cover this thing called the value gap, which you're now finding houses in the $300,000 range. They assess for less than it costs to build. So we're giving, the governor proposed, and we agree that we're giving that money to the builder to offset the cost of construction. Otherwise, they wouldn't build. But even then, there's still some subsidy to the homeowner who comes in. And the administration, what they wanted to do was just, let's assume there's a $50,000 subsidy. They said that $50,000 would stay with the house forever. But that $50,000, if you think it's 20, 30 years, it's going to be pretty much worthless in terms of a subsidy for the next buyer. And that's not the way we do low income subsidized housing. We do perpetual affordability with what's called a shared equity, where as the equity increases for 99 years, the state keeps 75% of that equity and the 25% goes to the homeowner. I still think that's a great deal. I mean, they're getting you into the home, they're giving you a subsidy, and so you give something back to the next person. We sort of split the baby and gave the department the authority to do one or the other with a preference towards the share equity program. But if they wanted to do it all in terms of just the discount, what I call the discount program, they could. So those are the two big programs. The other program in here is mobile home. And this is something I reached out to Stephanie this morning because I'm confused. There's $5 million appropriated to ACCP to help in all aspects of mobile home development. And I was assured, I asked the question to the administration and to Seal, I said, this is already in the budget. This is not additional money to what the governor is asking for. And they both told me yes. And now I'm not clear. I don't know if Stephanie knows.
Yeah, so the tax credit that the governor proposed was the $1 million growing to 5 million over 5 years. The base, I'm not aware of a base budget that's pre-existing right now for mobile homes beyond the administration's activity that's up there. I mean,
There's no big, I mean, VHCB does some of these programs already, I guess with their existing money, but this is additional money. So I think now that Stephanie mentioned, I think what's going on, it's really complicated, is I think the governor's original proposal had a $1 million tax credit for 5 years for mobile, and that equated to $5 million. So what Josh Hanford was telling me, we got it covered in the budget. We would rather go this appropriation route rather than the tax credit route. Does that sound right, Stephanie?
So, I mean, the way the governor proposed it is a tax credit.
Right.
And so it would be $1 million in 23 and then $5 million FY28. And it's covered in the budget, just like our conversation earlier in the day, that if you set up the tax credit statute, it's available, it's there. But if you're saying you want to convert that to $5 million in the 23 budget of actual appropriation, that is a $4 million pressure on the budget.
Okay.
From the governor's point of view, it's $5 million.
I've been trying to be sensitive all the way through on the appropriation. I think I stayed below the numbers you had suggested to me, but I was told that this was a wash, that you could put $5 million in the appropriation. They would rather do it that way. And that came from the Commissioner of Housing. So we went with that version as opposed to the tax credit version.
5 million of ARPA.
Yes.
So it's not a general fund pressure if it's out of ARPA, it just,
Because of ARPA.
and what you're seeing is $20 million of ARPA being spent in this bill for housing, and that means the remainder is the $50 million that the governor had in the housing tab, most of it going to the HCV, I think.
I think so. I'm really not all that familiar with Gus, with the VHCB appropriation.
He had that $5 million piece dedicated to the municipalities for mixed use
Right,
space,
somehow that money,
mixed income.
yeah, we didn't do that one.
And that was, there wasn't much definition anywhere in the budget on what that was.
There was another 5 million somewhere in the
But
budget.
that was also out of the ARPA tab.
Municipalities did not, we've never heard anything about that.
So really, what we're appropriating here would be ARPA. And then the tax credit.
The tax credit got lowered to 250,000 in that, as opposed to $1 million.
250 in FY '23,
Free, and that's a 5.
and then the structure would bring it up to 1.25 over 5 years.
Well, I've got that, the downtown village incentive tax credit, 2 million, and affordable housing tax credit. So there are two tax
There are
credits.
two credits, yeah.
For 2.2.
But
And that's base funding.
Yes.
That's all general fund.
So that's the pieces that would have to fit into that $40 million target.
Right, and so we last year had been
Yeah,
finance, I
the
don't
40
know.
million, right, next.
Yeah, last year in finance, I think the governor had proposed an increase to 475 on the downtown tax credit. We approved it there, I think you took it out here, I don't know. But it never made it to the governor's.
No, it
desk.
didn't because it was an expenditure that we either would have to cut something else in an equivalent amount, or you'd have to have a revenue increase to offset it, and neither was done. So that's what happened on that.
So here's the policy in our thinking, and this is sort of something that we were alluded to next door, is distinguishing between a tax credit and tax expenditure. In this case, I view the tax expenditure as very much a social good that we're trying to achieve, just like we do with any other appropriation. It just works better
And what was
as
it?
a tax credit. But the goal here is that that program has been oversubscribed for years, and been very successful. And when it was first brought to me, the idea of expanding it, they just said, we want to expand it to neighborhood development areas. So not just downtown housing, but also in the circumference of that downtown. And my first reaction was, unless you get more money, I'm not interested, because you're going to dilute the existing program. And the governor came forward with a proposal to give more money. And plus the amount of towns that have achieved designation over the last 5 or 6 years has really snowballed. So there's a lot more demand for smaller towns coming into this program. And, it does things like elevators.
Yeah, I know we actually had testimony from the downtown, whatever they are, and now they've created a coalition, and they want the coalition to get funded.
You and I, we can talk about that one.
Well,
I mean,
That's sort of like a base budget builder, and
it is.
after three weeks of testimony out of nowhere, we put it in the economic development bill, but only if it's funded out of the Federal Places Fund. So it doesn't cost any more money. But I was not in favor of that myself. I got overridden.
take it out there, fine.
But we're back to the discussion we had, and that is, in order to do this, we can't, we gotta keep that revenue foregone to that 40 million, no more than 40 million.
And I don't know where that number is now, but trying to think if there's any other.
Well, we can pull that. This has got so much policy and stuff. We can deal with the tax credit in the bigger bill.
But, well, we wouldn't want to deal with it in the budget, though. Would we want to deal with it in another tax vehicle?
Is there another, there is another tax vehicle, right?
I think there's two, or there's a property transfer tax vehicle, is there? And there's and then there's the child tax credit, clearly. So if you wanted to pull it out of this bill, you would want it.
It's gotta go in a different, yeah. I mean,
This is not, but this is But this is not the budget bill, so what's the difference between this and some other bill?
Because basically I'm committing general fund for this ahead of everything else in the budget. If I want to go this.
Or get, I mean, it's, what's not clear is whether or not, I mean, we had the discussion on the $40 million. If the Senate can stick to the $40 million as the target for, then you have spent 2.25 into the $40 million, and then it can stay in here. That's what's.
But I don't have a commitment yet from finance.
It's
Yeah, they're,
sort of above my pay grade, but all I can say is I think this is a good program.
I think everybody feels the downtown tax credit. We've seen it, it works, people really like it. That, it isn't the merits of it, it's just which, what vehicle it travels on. And the extent to which it is accommodated, in that tax reduction, target that we kind of provided to the committee next door.
So
Because the more revenues you forego in terms of tax reductions, it's impacting the capacity to fund these kinds of things.
I understand.
Yeah.
So the only other thing I think in here is 650,000, I can't remember if it's general fund or.
That is general.
It's general
For
fund.
the municipal bylaw grant program.
We did that before, didn't
We
we?
did that last year, and it was oversubscribed and has produced some good results with NACCD. So we're asking.
And that's within your target as well, that I gave you.
I think we're within the target.
So the target was on the economic development
No,
side.
you sent me something on,
So you had, if you,
I say within the governor's spending, this is what right?
so it's a question. The 650, I think that we did it this way last year, is we ended up putting that in the big bill in the end. Because when we get your economic development bill, did it spend all the way up to the 25 of general fund, or did it leave any room?
No, I did not.
Okay, then
But you still have to accommodate all the house proposals, right, to the 25?
eventually everything has to be, well, the house may be slightly different on the target, but we don't, not exactly clear where the house's
No,
target is, but
the economic development only spends about 15 of the 25.
then it's probably fine to have that stay in there.
All right, then we can let the 650 stay, we'll take the tax credit and figure out what vehicle we put it on. And that ties into your committee next door. Not reducing revenues more than $40 million. But I think people heard my message, I hope, Michael, today.
I heard it loud and clear.
No, I know you did, that's just hoping that other people understood. If the more you reduce revenues, the less we've got to
And I don't know where we are, and that's the million chat credit is a big one.
that's gonna be where all the
Work
money
The whole
is.
thing out, right?
Well, you can reduce the benefit a bit, that would get you there.
We have a lot, in the economic development bill, we have a lot of money that I'm not all that comfortable with for business grants and for capital grants. And I don't know if there's any way we can use that other than lowering the ARPA spending, but if there's any way to use it in other places, I think we might be open to that. They're large amounts of money, 40 and 20. That's what the governor wanted, like 110, and we're down to 40.
That's what I went and talked to Michael about yesterday, that's not in this,
That's the next bill.
You're talking about to help with the organic farms.
and we don't have to.
Well, they're a part of the business sector. I don't know to what extent they fit in terms of the scheme or are permissible.
Well, if it's not permissible, it's not permissible, but we just highlighted a few sectors to make sure that they got some sort of priority attention, in terms of.
And I know the auditor has been having email exchanges with you in terms of his view about what is a permissible use or not, so that's kind of helpful to have that upfront rather than after the fact.
Yeah.
All
Has to be up.
right, so what I think we've decided here is the tax credit, we were going to attach to another either tax bill, and that would be part of that calculation around the 40 million target that you're working with next door. And we'll keep the 650 for municipal planning here. And the missing middle, we'll let that move forward, but that's what we took out.
That's all within the ARPA target.
Yeah, and it was really, what we said was in the BAA was to get that fleshed out a bit more.
Would you do both the 5 and the 10?
What?
Would you do both the 5 and the 10 on the offer? Which is in the middle, because 5, we put 5 in 22 and 10 in 23.
Yes, the whole 15 would go.
Okay,
It doesn't make a difference on the year in the ARPA. You can.
maybe I'll get the governor to sign it.
That's
Yeah, that was, the 5 million,
Did your phone say who was calling?
Yes.
Wow, I never heard it.
did it talk to you, Lee?
I mean, it says it out loud.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know why.
I'm a little confused though, Stephanie, what is the 23 here, our appropriation?
So the 23 is 10 for the missing middle and 5 for the, at the bottom of the manufactured home relocation
Okay.
incentive program. So that's out of ARPA.
Okay, all right.
So that,
I wanted to know if 10 was for the missing middle in 23 plus the 5 and 22 for the
that's the
15,
15.
then where that additional 5?
And the 5 is the manufactured housing.
Oh,
And so that leaves still ARPA for the VHCB pieces and the overall ARPA housing target.
The manufactured
And maybe I need to
home
use a little bit of that
relocation
for
incentive, is
broadband
that to get
Yeah.
That or
mobile
just to
homes
close,
out of
you know, or
floodplain areas?
Partially.
That's easily
Improve
figured out.
them and
So, but as long as Michael's got a little shuck there, that helps us.
Yeah.
Because in building your target, I kind of borrowed a little bit from here or there on the ARPA, so. You said
I missed what, I'm sorry.
you had said some of the ARPA stuff was a little spongy and you hadn't spent it all. And
Well, we're on the cusp of voting it today, and now it's not gonna be voted until Tuesday, but it's, as of now, the capital program is at 40, and the VITA program is at 20. And what I'm saying to you is those numbers have moved around a lot more.
And I just might move them a little bit, that's all I'm telling you. I'll let you know if I have to.
Okay.
Because it sounds like they're negotiable. You've been talking about should it be 40, should it be
Right.
30 or whatever.
Right.
Okay, all right. Thank you. We are going to have a motion, I hope, that we would move the bill, well, we would amend the bill.
Well, we can get the drafters before it's part of data call. Do you want to work on
Oh,
an
wait.
amendment and then we'll do it tomorrow?
We'll do it tomorrow. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Does this deal with your problem with your timing for tomorrow afternoon and your flight?
I possibly could change my flight back to the third time, but I don't think I have. I
Okay,
appreciate that, though.
all right, well, I hope you can work it out so you can get an earlier flight again.
Thank you.
All right, so that's.
Where's it going?
Yeah. The one thing.
Should we go offline? Are we done?
Yeah,
I think we're done.
all
We've
the time.
covered the bills that we have, and so I'm going to adjourn the committee